Welcome to Paradigms at paradigms.life, the radio show and podcast that brings you inspiring people with visions of a viable future for life on Earth that includes humans. In this episode, we're really exploring that vision with 4 guests talking about their work and their visions for the future, along with some great music. So let's meet them now on this episode of Paradigms. Welcome to Paradigms, Starhawk, Debbie Ogden, Amani Will, and Phil Cosden.
Hi.
Yo, yo.
Good to be here.
Thank you all for being willing to participate in this. We're going to be talking about a big question, but before we do, I'd just love to give each of you a chance to introduce yourself and tell listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do in the world. Let's start with Starhawk.
Hi, I'm Starhawk. I am a writer, an activist, a permaculture designer, and teacher. I'm the director of Earth Activist Training, which teaches permaculture design, ecological design, with a grounding in spirit and a focus on organizing and activism. I've written 13 books, and I've also been an activist and been deeply involved in the earth-based spirituality movement for many decades.
I'm Debbie Ogden from Myanmar for the past 18 years. I co-founded Proximity Designs, and we're a design company, basically a social business that designs and delivers products and services to smallholder farm families who form the backbone of the economy. The products and services we design are meant to be affordable and profitable for them, and also good for nature and soils and regenerative agriculture. And we are a social business and basically treat smallholder farm families as our customers.
Yo, peace y'all. My name is Amani Will. I am the founder of Inner Equity Coaching Council. I run a private practice focused on indigenous healing modalities, somatic therapies, and mindfulness. And I'm also a visual and audio collage artist using the medium of collage as a way of amplifying the fractal nature of existence.
Hello, I'm Phil Cosden. I graduated from NYU in sociology many decades ago, but you don't make a living as a sociologist for the most part. And I went into acupuncture. I have training in shamanism and, of course, astrology. And I've been doing the acupuncture for the last 41 years. But I still am actually a sociologist and wrote a book on solutions, and it's how to change the world because the social political world needs changing. And I now have podcasts up as well. Journal of the American Revolution 2. Just start with the United States, but I think the world needs changing, especially ecologically.
Earth is an integrated system of life. If we accept that premise, then we must see ourselves as part of that web of life forms, all ultimately interdependent. With that in mind, how do we address the current state of humanity on Earth? What are the challenges humanity faces, and how can we meet them successfully, sustainably, with respect to the interdependence of all life on Earth? What do the humans need to do differently, and what are paths to those changes? Starhawk, Debbie Ogden, Amani Will, and Phil Cosden will be exploring that question. But first we're going to hear some music, and that gives you a chance to think about the question too. Here's Joni Mitchell from her album Shine, Big Yellow Taxi. You're listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.
Put up a parking lot with a pink hotel, a boutique, and a swinging night spot. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. all the trees, put them in a tree museum. And they charged all the people an arm and a leg just to see. Don't it always seem to go that you don't know what you got till it's gone? They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Give me spots on the apples, but leave me the birds and the bees. Please, don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. Last night I heard the screen door slam, and a big yellow taxi come and took away my old man. Oh, don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you got till it's gone. They paved paradise, put up a parking lot. They put up a parking lot. A parking lot.
From her 2007 album Shine, that's Joni Mitchell with her own remake of Big Yellow Taxi. And now let's get back to my conversation with Starhawk, Debbie Ogden, Amani Will, and Phil Cosden.
Well, I would say I certainly agree with that. And we need to make some big changes right now, particularly in the light of climate change, which I look at not just as a matter of increasing carbon in the atmosphere, but that it represents the massive global breakdown of ecological systems. In some ways, that's hopeful because the truth is we know how to rebuild and regenerate ecological systems. And we have some great examples around the world of having seen that done on a really large and massive scale. The challenge is always the people part, the political will to do it, the political will to stop doing the things that are making the problem worse. And a lot of that, I think, comes down to organizing and to how we invite people into the movement. I often feel like a lot of times in the environmental movement, what we're saying to people is, the world is in a mess, it's worse than you thought, and it's probably your fault. That might be true, but it's not a good way to organize or mobilize people. And I think a lot of people look at climate change and feel hopeless about it and despairing. And because of that, they turn off, they deny, or they become hostile, or they go believe in something that makes them feel good, some strange conspiracy theory, or they just get mad and blame. God knows there's plenty of reason to blame, but I think what we need to be telling people is like, look, the world is in a mess, it's true, but there's still the potential to create a world that is going to be better than you ever imagined, better for everybody, more just, more equitable, more in balance, more healthy. And you have a vitally important role to play. Whoever you are, you have unique gifts and talents, and you are here on Earth at this crucial time to make your contribution. So let's do it. We can do it. And I think if we start telling people that, if we can build a movement that is truly welcoming and affirming of people, that doesn't deny some of the really grim realities, but also does it in a way that is hopeful, then we actually can do it. The thing is, the thing that we need to do to deal with climate change are actually nice things. There are things like relocalizing our industries and our agriculture, like growing regeneratively without poisons and toxins, growing healthier food, getting to know your neighbors, working together on things that make people feel good, having more time for your friends and family, and maybe having less like mini mansions and SUVs and things, but having more of the things that really truly feed us and give us pleasure and health. So I guess that's my response. Yeah.
For us, we've been focusing on the role of smallholder farm families, and there are 500 million in the world. And, I think we need to reframe our relationship with them and how we view them and treat them. They are not, poor peasants or, victims. And I think they are caretakers of our very important resources, soil, water, our natural ecosystems, and they produce like 80% of the food in a lot of their countries, and yet they're starved of resources and investments and support. So we need to really reframe that whole relationship and where we put our investments. It's not like rocket science, what to do, but we just don't invest in the R&D and the access, giving them access to, extension and the science and all the support that's needed. And so, we've been doing farming the wrong way. And so everyone's going to need to transition into a much more sustainable way of farming and producing food. And so I think the smallholders we work with, they farm like 3-4 acres, 5 acres. And, they see themselves as people who want to take care of their resources and are proud of it and their role in that. And so we should treat them as climate heroes and, recognize them financially as well for those things. And so that's really having to reframe that. And so in the circles I'm in, that is a message that like for financial institutions and carbon markets, how do you include these very important people who are right on the front lines of climate change and the direct caretakers? And how do you have payment for ecosystem services? And I do agree with Starhawk, that it does boil down to leadership and creative leadership. All of us have a role. Every job is a climate job. Every job is a planet job. So it's no longer, business as usual. I've worked closely with John Foley, the head of Project Drawdown, who's a climate scientist. And I like his quote. He says, Martin Luther King didn't say, I have a nightmare. He said, I have a dream. And so, for him, I really like what John Foley's stance as a climate scientist. He's saying we have an opportunity, a lifetime opportunity, once in a lifetime opportunity to shape our future. And we can do it. And it's not gloom and doom if we really step up and lead, all of us, every one of us do our job. For me, the focus on smallholder farmers is really critical because they're part of our food systems and natural ecosystems, and they've long been, neglected, and that needs to be corrected.
I love this question. I love what y'all have said so far. Yeah, I mean, we're not reinventing the wheel, and this is not rocket science, and this is literally the way that we have spent living as humans for most of our time being humans, is a sustainable, ecologically in tune way of being. And it's only very recently, since colonial agriculture, that we've begun to have the issues that we're having that have brought us to where we are. And so really, so much of what we're asking for and what we're needing is a remembrance. It's not actually something that we have to become hell of innovative about and figure out something new to respond to. It's actually like most of the time we've existed, we've been doing this. Let's just go back to it. And then there's the integrative part, right, of where we have become different creatures in some ways. We have these systems. We have essentially a cancer on the Earth's body that has commandeered the vascular system, the resource distribution systems, and all of the management systems of the earth for its own benefit and for the detriment of the rest of the creatures on earth. And so we have to go through this healing process, this transition process of how do we meet where we are now while remembering where we have been to come to a new place. I can speak to the work that I do is mostly with individuals at this point, or with the collective through art. And so much of it is focused on our own internal integration, decolonializing ourselves, coming back into tune with ecological harmony being the priority rather than some superficial product being the priority, and that being within ourselves too. You know, how are we extracting from our own selves, from our own experiences, prioritizing particular parts of who we are to leverage them to extract particular experiences and materials to be in this exchange of our externalized extractive systems? How do we return to a more holistic care of ourselves? How does that process help us be in that process with those that we're in direct relationship with? And how does that process help us see the whole earth and shift our whole way of being into a way that's in tune and sustainable?
I agree with almost everything everyone has said. But if you look at the United States as opposed to around the world where there are small farms, in the United States, less than 1% of the population, less than 1%, 0.7% of the population feeds us all. Okay, it's big farms. There are small farms, but they don't do as well, and they're small, and they don't dominate the business. Okay, that's absolutely recent. Okay, that's industrial farming. You go back to the beginning of the United States, it's Thomas Jefferson's time. It's 95% of the population is farming. You go 100 years ago, 120 years ago, maybe 50% of the population, but it's now 1% and it's industrial farming. Okay. The question is, and Starhawk brought this up about people. And after a while, we think this is the only way to be. And look how productive we are. United States in farming is incredibly productive. We could probably feed the whole world. Okay. China has 5 times the population that we have. It has 1/5 of the arable land, and it gets by. It's actually quite amazing what they do. But eventually, with climate change, all of Asia is not going to be doing as well, considering what's going on. But let me go back to people and people in the United States who no longer farm, 1%, less than 1%. And there is this problem of people's attitudes. It's a problem, both in terms of educating people about what's going on, and then, and I agree with everyone now, having not just the small leadership, which is not doing very well at all at being leaders, but actually the people in the country need to change what's going on in the country. But there is a certain amount of education that needs to go on because they've been sold by this leadership. I don't care if it's left, right, Democrat, Republican. They've been sold on this system and want this system, the normal, what we consider the normal, to keep going on. And yet the normal is pathological. Industrial civilization is pathological. You keep going on this way, how many people are going to be left? I remember in the early 1970s going to a special lecture at NYU. They had a French ecologist coming in. This is probably 1971, right? And he says, you know, all my colleagues in biology are telling me human beings are done. You know, now you get a lot more scientists doing this. And he said, no, I don't think that's true. I'm much more of an optimist. There are just going to be a lot fewer people than are now. The next 100 years, there's now 8 billion people on the planet. Can you imagine the amount of suffering that's going to take place in the next 100 years if we don't change substantially and do what you see and I see as the proper way to conduct ourselves?
We'll be back with more discussion of what humans need to do differently. But here's some more music. This is Tom Nielsen with Common Good.
It was in 2002 William knew just what to do. He was tired of all the hungry people dying. If your system is a bust, then turn to whom you trust, and a new and better way to be a-trying. You can give your taxes to a war or a Coca-Cola store, or to corporate health insurance, that's a scam. Or grow food so you can eat it, build a home for those who need it. To me, that's a common good plan. Common good, common good. Take control in our neighborhood. There's really nothing to it, just gotta wanna do it. Sharing like we should, for the common good. Why give $1 billion to a bank that's foreclosing on a home? Millions more to clear cut our trees. We'd be better off if we could weatherize a home and invest in green renewable energies. Common good, common good. Take control in our neighborhood. There's really nothing to it, just gotta wanna do it. Sharing like we should, for the common good. So let's take control of our money. A revolution with a bank. People and the planet first, not missiles or a tank. Sustain local economy. Circulate our money around. And for the common good, keep our money in our town. Common good, common good. Take control in our neighborhood. There's really nothing to it, just gotta wanna do it. Sharing like we should, for the common good. There's really nothing to it, just gotta wanna do it. Sharing like we should, for the common good.
From his album It's a Crime to Tell the Truth, that's Tom Nielsen with Common Good. Some great stuff in that song. All right, now we're going to get back to discussion with my guests, Debbie Ong Din, Amani Will, Phil Cosden, and Starhawk. It sounds like what people are saying is we need to work on ourselves so we can work together to fix this, and that's doable, that it's not about some radical reinvention of anything. It's simply about remembering stuff people have done forever.
Baruch, I just wanted us to be clear. We don't need to work on ourselves first, and then when we've completed all that work and perfected ourselves, get around to doing it. I really agree. We got to do it now, but doing it now can be also a way of working on ourselves. It's funny, just yesterday, I was on a walk with our forestry committee. My land is part of a larger homeowners association that was set up in the 70s to take some of the big ranches around here and subdivide them into smallholder homesteads. So there's a big cattle ranch that was 2,500 acre sheep ranch, actually, not cattle. And they divided it into 60 parcels of 40 acres. We own some of them in common, and a lot of us own our separate ones, but we have a ranch association that manages things like the roads, and I'm the head of the forestry committee that does work on the common parcels and the roadsides around fuel reduction and fire safety and forest health. That's one of the main things that we can do, at least to address what out here in the West is one of the major effects of climate change that we're already seeing, with these really increased wildfires, increased in intensity and increased in severity and frequency. And it's a common thing that unites everyone. It doesn't matter your politics, it doesn't matter your religion or your race or any of those things that can divide us. We're all worried about fire, and we're all susceptible to fire. Yeah, so we were walking the roadside to look at what needed to be done on this particular place. There's a couple members in our committee who tend to clash a lot, They love each other, they're mostly on the same page, but they get into arguments. And at one point, each of them was saying, I know I do this and I'm working on it. And the other one was saying, well, I know I do this and I'm working on it. And I finally said, well, we could have a group therapy group and we could just all sit here and work on our stuff. Or we could do our forestry committee, we can work on our stuff, and we can also get a whole lot done that needs to get done. And I feel like that's what we need to do. If we get a whole lot done, believe me, working together with other people is a great opportunity, no matter who you are, to work on yourself. And we need those skills. We need people who have some of the social skills and people skills to help those groups and those committees and those organizations function and thrive. But I feel like we need to do it in the context of getting work done. And honestly, working together on something is one of the greatest ways to bring people together.
For the last 18 years, we've been focused on farmers in Myanmar. And there's like 6 million households, and we've had a lot of work. Now we're seeing that, climate change transcends boundaries, and this sort of things we're doing, other folks, peer organizations in Africa, Latin America are interested in sort of the solutions we've come up with for farmers, practical solutions. And so we see now our identity as being part of a collective action to come together, not only as one organization, and that it's something that not one organization can do alone. And so that realization has made us, over the past year, really form a coalition of organizations who work with smallholder farmers globally. And for all of us, who've had mature organizations, it's a real mindset shift in terms of we're not running our own company, we're developing and growing a coalition, a community or a collective action, which is a different mindset of sharing and doing shared R&D, shared platform, and all this, and recognizing that we can't do it alone. And so I think for us, that's how we've sort of grown. And I think maybe even as individuals, how we see ourselves as individuals. I mean, it's been such an individualistic society and all those values of, individual action. And it seems like we have to sort of grasp hold of our identity as a global citizen, much more than just an individual in the US, and then I can do what I want. And the American dream, the so-called American dream.
Anything that is talking about giving land back to indigenous people, that is talking about giving voice and power back to indigenous people, because those are the people that have been living forever in the ways that we need to transition to, or that we need the wisdom from to transition to. And then I think about life as a fractal, and I think about, all the different ways we need to meet the issues that we're dealing with right now from every direction in every area of our lives. And so whatever your modality is, whatever your passions are, whatever your purpose is, something that is seated in the intention to bring equity and justice for all, for that to go beyond our human centricness and to include all beings everywhere, for that to include equity in meeting resource with need equitably, and for that to consider all beings everywhere, even if it's just you and 3 people working very locally. I would definitely encourage everybody to get into healing relationships with a therapist, with a community, with practitioners of some kind, where you're reconnecting with the body, where you're reconnecting with the earth, where you're reconnecting with the sacred, with that which is precious and connects you to everything. with a liberation mindset, which with that, something that is considering everybody and that equity. These are both very clear and obvious times where we know a lot about what we need to do. These are also unprecedented times where none of us actually fully knows. And so part of our decolonization is letting go of there being one right answer, one right way, one right scale. Part of our decolonization is also trusting that if we are nature and if we cannot be separated from nature, that what is happening now in the human realm is still also a part of a natural cycle. And so also working with the inaccurate sense that this is all our fault from our human centricness, and working with the shame that comes from that way of seeing this, and alleviating some of both the debilitating responsibility that's inappropriate and opening some of the sense of where resource comes from and where the answer comes from. If it's not just us, then we also need to open who we're looking to, what we're looking to for answers and for what is actually happening.
Unless you take the bigger problems, climate change, actually what caused climate change, which is this mass industrialization and people leaving the farm in mass. Okay, like I said, in the United States, it's less than 1%. In poorer parts of the world, it's much greater. The warming of the sea, I remember reading this article in New York Review of Books, several books, and this author, low key, it said, well, within a few decades, there are going to be no more fish in the ocean. You'll have freshwater fish, a few left, no fish. There'll be no more fishing. You think there's too much fishing now? There'll be no more fishing. And all you're going to have sushi, but it's going to be, not from fish. And the bigger problems in society led by an elite, not by people, by an elite who does things in their own interests, like gas companies, right? It's going to do in all those farmers. It's going to do in all those farmers and sheep herders and cow herders out in the Southwest. The Southwest has been emptied before, natural droughts. It's going to be emptied again. You're going to see 40 million, 100 million people have to leave the Southwest of the United States because it ain't going to be there. It's already happening. You remember that war in Syria? It was because 1 million people were off the farm because of climate change, had to go to urban areas, caused this war because there was a big problem in Syria. The whole Middle East will be overheating to such an extent you can't live there. Think Palestinians, Israel is such a big problem now. Wait until no one can live there. Okay, where are those people going to go? Think immigration is a problem now. Wait till all that climate change happens. And I agree, local farms should have a huge influence. But there's much more to this that needs to be done. I'm with Amani. We need to deindustrialize, believe it or not. We actually need to some extent to deindustrialize and outlaw within a short period of time, outlaw oil, okay, within a short period of time. Climate change is going to happen. The question is at what speed it's going to happen. So, okay, one glacier goes in, it's up 2 feet in the ocean. What happens when they all go from Antarctica, from Greenland, and the oceans go up, as scientists are predicting, within 50 years or 100 years? All those small farms are gone. And we need to do something. We need to do it now. And we need, just as you're suggesting, we need to do it in groups. People need to do it because the elites who control this system by far across the world ain't doing it. I'm with Greta Thunberg. They give you a superficial, oh yeah, we're doing something. We're doing a little here. We're doing a little there. Greta's got it right. Greta's my hero. She says that's all superficial. It ain't happening. It really isn't happening. And it needs to happen so badly.
We'll be back with the final part of this really interesting conversation. But here's a song by Bonnie Raitt. It's the title track from her latest album, and it won a Grammy this year for Song of the Year. Congratulations, Bonnie. It's called Just Like That. This is Paradigms at paradigms.life.
I watched him circle around the block, finally stopped at mine. Took a while before he knocked, like all he had was time. Excuse me, ma'am, maybe you can help. The directions weren't so clear. I'm looking for Olivia Zan. They said I might find her here. Well, I looked real hard and asked him what she's got he's looking for. Said there's something I think she'd want to know when I let him in the door. It's not like me to trust so quick, it caught me by surprise. But something about him gave me there in his eyes. Just like that your life can change. If I hadn't looked away, my boy might still be with me now. He'd be 25 today. No knife can carve away the stain, no drink can drown regret. They say Jesus brings you peace and grace. Well, he ain't found me yet. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Na 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 na. Sat down and took a deeper breath and looked right in my face. I heard about the son you lost, how you left without a trace. I spent years just trying to find you so I could finally let you know it was your son's heart that saved me, and a life you gave us both. Just like that your life can change. Look what the angels send. I laid my head upon his chest and I was with my boy again. Well, I spent so long in darkness, I never thought the night would end. But somehow grace has found me, and I had to let him in.
Bonnie Raitt, Just Like That. That's a powerful song. And the feelings that that brings up, the caring, the generosity of spirit, we can take that and share that with the whole world. We can direct that at everyone if we choose to. All right, here's the final part of the discussion between Amani Will, Starhawk, Phil Cosden, and Debbie Ogden, pondering the question posed at the beginning of the episode about what humans need to do differently to make things work on Earth.
When you kind of live on land and you work with land, whatever you do is never enough. I mean, I could sit here and list 15 different things I should be doing right now while I'm talking to you. But one of my friends always says, like, don't look at what you didn't get done this week. Look at what you got done this year. And for me, it was also one of the lessons of the pandemic is not focusing just on all the stuff you don't have and the things you can't do, but looking around and saying, what can we do? And doing what you can do, you end up a hell of a lot better off than just simply getting discouraged and not doing anything. And I think there are many, many things that people can do. You can support the groups like Greta Thunberg and the other activist groups that are trying to stop the fossil fuels and stop the pipelines and, put a spoke in the wheel of the infrastructure. You can support the groups like Debbie's and like so many other groups around that are supporting regenerative efforts. You can look around and say, well, what can I do in my own community to help organize us around responding to some of the impacts of climate change? What can I do to help build soil, to plant trees, to do the regenerative things that need to be done, and to tell the story, right, that this is doable, this is possible, and particularly to be telling people you have an important role to play, whoever you are. You have unique gifts that the world needs right now, and we want you part of this movement. We want you on Mother Earth's regenerative team.
I would agree with that. And also just in terms of your own values and life and, purpose, there are practical things daily like composting and looking at your external environment and the community and what can be done and just the consumption choices we make. And we do have agency. We can call companies up and say, why are you packaging this thing with all this hard plastic? I often do that and register that as my customer feedback and things like that. So we, in our personal consumption and choices, there are things we can do every day. And I would say that, one thing that's very closely related to all this is our own mental health. Everyone's mental health. And, that is also a crisis level globally. And it's not a coincidence either. I think we're so disconnected with nature, with those disconnected with the world around us and animals, and that it creates huge mental health problems. And yet we need everyone to be whole and to have that journey. And so to really take responsibility for your inner journey as well. And because that does affect your outer journey.
We're in a crossroads time, and we are being required to let something die and rebirth something, or birth something. The old matrix, the old way of thinking that births a way of being, that perpetuates a way of thinking, is dying and has to die for the earth and for the earth's inhabitants to live. And so I would say first, make peace with death. Work on making peace with death and notice how that brings you to life, and notice how that brings you back to the earth. You're going to die. It's for sure. And where you're going to go when you die, for sure, one place is back to the earth to feed the earth again, the same way the earth is feeding you right now every day. And so working just there first of like some is happening in the world. It is actually not an unnatural phenomena. The end result, one way or another, is part of a natural phenomena. I am within the natural systems. Let me approach this issue as a natural process rather than something's wrong. The apocalypse is coming. Hell is on its way. I messed up and my ancestors messed up, and there's no way that I can fix it, or it's up to me or just us to fix it. To let that coming home to self and to earth be a process of bringing you out of what we need to be divesting from and what needs to be dying, and back into and anew into where we're going. There are folks planting, hundreds of miles of trees across Africa right now. And that's significant, and that's going to help, and that's affordable, and it's something that is organic, available everywhere, that will take care of itself once it gets to a certain point, that will take care of the whole earth and all of its beings once it's living on its own and living together in its ecology. Using the resources that are available, that are sustainable, that will continue to put resources back into the world, that are readily available, that are in tune and in harmony and a part of natural cycles that we want to amplify. And you can do this on every level.
Edmund O. Wilson is a famous biologist. What Edmund O. Wilson, towards the end of his life, suggested was that we put aside 1/3 of the earth, 1/3, and instead of doing any farming, there's a 6th great extinction. It's not only people who are going to die, but animals are already dying en masse. The 6th great extinction. It's happened before, but for environmental reasons, now it's happening because of us. It's discouraging to me. It's depressing. And depression, mental depression, is the appropriate emotion. Okay, that's the nature of the earth. If you don't do the right thing, you're going to have people dying. You're going to have animals dying. Okay, that's what's going on. What Edmund O. Wilson said is give 1/3, give it back to the earth. Okay, you don't have to plant anything. I think we should plant 1 trillion trees too. I'm glad I heard about them doing that in Africa too, 1 trillion trees. But he said no one should be on 1/3. You go the wilderness, not only national parks, but a good deal of the earth. 1/3 should go back to no more people because people are ruining it. And maybe the animals will come back and the trees will come back and the natural world will come back. And I think 1/3 of the earth should be for farming, 1/3 to be organic farming. And it should be organic farming. And it should treat the soil right. And it should treat the animals right. And it should be on small farms owned by the people on the farms rather than big corporate farms. 1/3 for that. And then 1/3 for your urban, suburban areas. But instead of building out, it's happening in North Carolina. You should see all the housing being built down here in this area. It spreads out and it takes the farmland and it takes the natural world away. You build up, you don't build out anymore. You want 8 billion people on the planet. You want big cities. You want 12 billion people in Tokyo or New York. You build up, you don't build out anymore because you need that farmland to feed those people in the cities and green the cities up as well. I'm agreeing with Edmund. So anyway, that's the bigger solution.
Thank you all for all of this. Obviously we have not solved the problems, but really, really great insights and encapsulations of what is happening. So I really appreciate just you willing to share your expertise and your experience. Let us all go forth and do these things.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the beautiful question.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm grateful to these 4 folks for participating in this discussion. You can find information about each of them at the Paradigms website, paradigms.life. Links to their websites, Starhawk of Earth Activist Training, Debbie Ong Din, Proximity Designs, Amani Will, and Phil Cosden, who are both healthcare practitioners. We don't solve the world's problems with these discussions, but we do share ideas. I hope you got some ideas listening to these 4 people and some inspiration. Let's take that out into the world. As all 4 of them have said, and as I think we all know, we need to do it now. All right, well, I'm going to leave you to contemplate all of what you've just heard. We're topping off the show with some music from Jim Roberts from his album The Tao of Time, The Voice of Wisdom, and Universal. And the word for the week is action. Let's take action. All right. This is Baruch signing off for this episode of Paradigms. We'll see you next time with more inspiring people. Until then, let's take action and be well.
Was that a dream? No, it is not a dream. In fact, it has never been more important to be awake. Ask yourself, am I awake or am I still sleeping? In either case, you have a choice to make.
On Earth, we only see a small picture of our infinite universe and a limited picture of our humanity. If all cultures, places, and things represent the big picture, then what we see and what we base all our decisions on is the small picture. Spacecraft Voyager 1 took a remarkable photograph from 3.7 billion miles from Earth. The Earth was just a tiny speck. This photo confronted us with an inalienable truth. Our reality is only based on a fragment of the total picture. Just represent one tiny hint of infinity. The small picture, just another place in space. From our viewpoint, we can only see our way of life, our cultures, and our customs. We only have one truth, one religion, one language, and one nationality. We invent our own truths. We only learn what our culture deems important. Our view of history, our view of economics, and our way to govern. Our knowledge of the past is tempered by the powerful, the victors of wars, the strong, or the wealthy. We even ignore our own culture's truth seekers, peacemakers, and whistleblowers, so we can create a vision of prosperity for others to see. The destiny of the world is determined by stories that are believed, whether true or fiction. We make up stories about our own existence and how we were created and what is going to happen to us when we die. We associate justice with privilege instead of fairness and values. We remain loyal to stereotypes of superiority about race, gender, and sexual orientation in order to create fear so that those in control will remain in control. In our reality, we only get one drop of time in the vast sea of existence of all things, which is the big picture. Some only see the small picture, but the open-minded strive for the celebration and inclusiveness of all people, all cultures, all humanity, and all life. It should be our mission, our quest to see beyond the limitations of our existence and to perceive the vision of the path of the universe. This is a shared path of all that exists. On it, we will find the truth and universal knowledge that exists everywhere. This is the big, the infinite, and the universal picture. The Tao of Time.
You've been listening to Paradigms at paradigms.life.